The Dangers in My Heart depicts a tale as old as time about a boy who believes he is a future psychopath and falls for the popular girl he believes he's supposed to kill, with a romantic twist of her falling for him as well. Polar opposite romance is always enjoyed when feeling romantic and not forced, and this series finds a perfect slow-way pace of giving plenty of reason for the reader of why these characters like each other, even if they don't believe the other does. With currently 4 volumes published, I want to do a triple review vid for the first 3, and why they perfectly build up to a heartwarming resolve, especially since I've got lots of manga I still want to review. For a general review, before getting into the specifics of each volume, the art is very unique based on what I typically read, but works perfectly for these characters, giving a sense of youth and baby faces to really feel that coming-of-age effect. The character figures, too, give sort of a Dexter's Laboratory vibe of making it clear in a silhouette of who's who without having to see their faces. Although, speaking of faces, I do enjoy Ichikawa's swirly eyes. Going into character personality, Ichikawa starts off strong and scary, maybe not relatable in his dreams of murder, but relatable in the fact that he's a narcissistic and believes he's better than everyone else because he's aware of the pointlessness of teenage hierarchy. But as the series continues, he becomes less scary and more of just an outcast type. Maybe eventually would be like Horimiya, as someone who could have gone down a dark path if he remained alone. Either way, his own characteristics constantly contradict themselves, which lead to cute, uncringe humor, claiming to not care but always following his heart. Then there's Yamada, the popular and beautiful girl that the majority of the school has a crush on. From creepy older classmen to fellow classmates, they perv in their own ways, while she's just trying to succeed in what I'm assuming is a potential idol, while enjoying the company of her best friends. For her, it's her enjoyments that contradict her goals. She tries to become an actress and model and other forms of idol work, while not being able to stop eating snacks all the time and participating in competitive sports that can get her hurt. In the end of the day, she's a child who's just trying to do what makes her happy and endures the pressure of society and growing up because of her body and looks. It's easy to break this series down in 3 acts so far, perfectly placed in each volume. The first being Ichikawa realizing he has feelings for Yamada. At first being narcissistic and having a superiority complex, he grounds himself the more he finds himself coming to Yamada's aid, only to realize most of the time she never needed it, and that he was only doing it because he cared. The second being Yamada realizing she has feelings for Ichikawa and constantly poking around his walls to get closer to him. The third being a very flirtatious extravaganza where they both keep trying further and further to ask the other out and constantly finding themselves in awkward and hilarious, cute, and embarrassing situations. And the funniest to analyze. Anyway, that feels like enough general talk. Let's get into each volume now. Volume 1. Ichikawa is a lonely introvert who prefers solitude rather than company, although it could just be because he's like Tamako, not being invited to gatherings even though he doesn't ask to join. Unlike Tamako, he's not envious of being excluded from the group, he just doesn't enjoy the meetings of the minds when it comes to kids his own age. Even he gets mad at himself when he ends up having the same thoughts as other boys in class. It's what causes to have constant inner conflict because he feels above the rest, being aware of the pointlessness of living a lively, stressful, popular teenage life, while then always shaming himself when getting caught up in the glamour of Yamada. It's funny because in general, he doesn't get pulled into anything remotely popular. He just accepts whatever role he becomes a part of and quietly does his part. But every time he comes across Yamada, he finds himself doing the stupidest things for her. At least in this manga series, no one questions what love truly is. They just accept that it's a feeling they don't want to lose and keep reaching for. And his preferred reading material about murder and death isn't something that's brought up until volume 4 actually. The first volume is about Ichikawa slowly rising out of his own self-deluded bubble and finding a reason to be socially interactive. There are plenty of characteristics about him that normal people would find interesting, but because he's so recluse and self-absorbed, he isn't aware. And he always thinks of the worst of people. But when he's sort of spending time with Yamada, he finds himself going from 10 to 100 within seconds and becoming quite the extrovert and sporadic person, going out of his way to save her from embarrassing situations that he formed in his head. Ichikawa realizes that he's in love with Yamada and accidentally flirting with her in the process, causing her to slowly start having feelings for him in the second half. My 2 favorite chapters are probably when he tries to distract the class from seeing her cry, because it's the first time we see him doing something absolutely ridiculous in the name of love, and the second being when he throws his bike into the river to save Yamada from having to give her number to an older boy. The build of her smiles and comfort with him in the volume goes just to show how small things matter in the building of a relationship. It gives a more realistic reason why Yamada would also slowly fall for Ichikawa, because of all the good deeds he does for her, not expecting anything in return and always leaping before he thinks when doing so. One of the more interesting aspects about this relationship story is that it's Ichikawa who is trying to deny his feelings about it. Typically, it's the more popular of the two who try to hide and deny, but for this story, it's the social hierarchy that turns off Ichikawa from her and makes him want to deny his feelings. But like most rom-com movies, it's when he realizes the other side of her and sees more of her human side and admits to himself that he likes her. Volume 2. For Volume 2, the game is different now. Yamada is fully crushing on Ichikawa and wants to get to know him better now. While Ichikawa is trying to harbor his emotions he feels for her, but is unable to resist her charm and finds himself constantly changing around her. Again, a thing that keeps this more different than the 5 other series you can compare it to is that Ichikawa isn't trying to make friends, he just keeps finding himself accidentally making them while his world begins to revolve around Yamada. And for someone who doesn't consider themselves among the social butterflies, has a surprisingly amount of self-esteem, even if he's too jittery with the lack of confidence. Even with a lot of chapters still being cute slice-of-life one-off, it changes now with Yamada intentionally trying to find herself in Ichikawa's way now. In a way, even though he's still our narrator, she takes control of the narrative in this volume. She's the front and center of this arc, because she knows something he doesn't, and is trying to decide where she wants things to go. Favorite chapters are probably the field trip arc. Even in the beginning, Ichikawa does what he can to be in Yamada's group, and she knows it. And it's even a surprise that their fellow classmates how much he's talking. Then Yamada helping Ichikawa get to see some hard prints, only for him to be disappointed when she isn't impressed with it. To them then getting left behind because she likes to be close to him, and then on the train she's holding his backpack with it still on him and asking what he thinks about secret relationships. In the end of the volume, it's the same resolution as the first one did, but the difference is that Yamada sees firsthand his affection for her, and she clearly decides that this is definitely the one for her. Another very funny and cute volume with many spicy moments of too close for comfort on both of them. I remember reading a tweet about how when it's a romance about the outsider having a crush on a popular kid, it's typical, but when it's the romance of the popular kid having a crush on the outsider, whoa baby. For all of his self-deprecation and loathing of the social hierarchy of high school life, Ichikawa is oddly enough someone who takes more risks and again has a higher self-esteem than most slice-of-life lead boys. And on the other end, Yamada also seems to have more of an edge and willingness to push forward in the romance she wants to pursue, rather than most slice-of-life lead girls, and being content with denial. Volume 3. This volume is without a doubt one of the funniest volumes from beginning to end I've ever read. From the cell phone misunderstanding to the parent-teacher conference to the newly arranged seating in class to one of the most satisfyingly cute endings, this volume has it all with a clear objective. They both like each other now, and they're trying to flirt, with the constant misunderstandings hitting them left and right. Yet, for some reason, this feels like the most uncringe style of comedy I've ever read. Romance chaos, if you would, having Ichikawa constantly accidentally saying all the right things most of the time, or just finding himself in the most embarrassing situations because of his willingness to do anything for this girl. If there is one thing to analyze, I suppose it would be about ownership. The whole volume both constantly feel that they have a claim of ownership over the other. Whether Yamada feels cheated on when Ichikawa shares books with another girl, or when Ichikawa feels relieved that Yamada's part in a young idol show gets cut short so she wouldn't get a chance to become famous just yet. They also feel responsible for each other with that claim of ownership. Yamada cares for Ichikawa when he's sick, and Ichikawa constantly finds himself trying to protect Yamada from either embarrassing situations or getting caught with literal food in her hands. My favorite 2 chapters are probably when Yamada asks Ichikawa if he uses line, and the pickup goes completely over his head, and then changing of seat arrangements. Both show classic comedy trope of a great build-up to a hilarious moment. The first, Ichikawa not realizing that Yamada wants his number, and only realizes when after she gets interrupted, giving a different girl his number, and witnessing her asking another guy, only to scream at the top of his lungs in the middle of class. And then when Ichikawa finds himself in a diagonal position of Yamada, unable to really see the chalkboard and ignoring personal space and ensuring that Yamada doesn't share books with his perv classmate, only to have to share it with his deskmate because Yamada's height and witnessing firsthand jealousy. And then when he tries to be honest with her about her height being an issue, he accidentally says one of the most romantic lines someone could ask for before finishing his sentence. Just 2 golden moments that bring back that classic old school sitcom style of funny. Now the final 2 chapters again give a similar conflict to how Ichikawa's inner demons work, but with a twist. Yamada, although spending a whole 80% of the chapter trying to will the courage to ask Ichikawa to come over and letting him know she's not seeing anyone, accidentally for a brief moment uses him in order to shoo someone away. And it hurts him, because this is what most protagonists in slices of life fear. That they were wrong about every situation that they considered possibly flirting in the building up of a relationship. He second guesses every special moment they've ever had now, wondering if it was all just in his head. Now, for Yamada's defense, she wasn't thinking clearly, and again, with her claim of ownership, she selfishly and carelessly tried to make a statement without considering Ichikawa's feelings. And for a conclusion, Ichikawa looks deeper into why he has feelings, and that it's not that he doesn't believe she couldn't like him. It's the fear that he can't have her. He needs a reason to hate her, because he's understood her feelings all along, and now it's his own that he doesn't understand. It's a great emotional climax of Ichikawa basically saying yes to himself, getting 2 hugs in the form of congratulations. He wants to love things, and have fun, and socialize, and talk, but because he's been pessimistic for so long, he's always been willing to throw those hopes away in order to shield himself from pain. It's really a beautiful ending to the best volume yet. I honestly have read Volume 4, and I still think Volume 3 is the best, but they do go back into the original premise of the series, which I do enjoy, and I'll get into that when I review. But anyway, for future volumes, Volume 5 doesn't come out until October, so we have to wait a while. Why? Why, God? Why? What do you think of the series so far? How would you compare or contrast it to other similar slice of life series, like Komi Can't Communicate or Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro? Would you be interested in the series getting an anime adaptation or not? Thank you for watching. This has been my first really long review, not counting Call of the Night volumes, but this is a triple vid basically, so I know it's might be a little long to read, but I personally enjoy long vids when it comes to topics I really love talking and listening about, so maybe you did too. That's all I can really think of right now. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and go read a book.